Welcome back to the Pitch Pod, everyone. I am your host, Jeff. Join with me this evening is my co-host, Joe Janner. Joe, what's going on over there?
As always, glad to be a part of the Pitch Pod. Looking forward to talk about where we're at, not only this upcoming preview for the match, but just kind of having a great talk about soccer. And here's a place to do it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to be covering a pretty big match this week here. We got Man City versus Arsenal, and it doesn't get bigger than this, right? You have those two. You have Liverpool fighting for the top of the table as we're getting to about 10 games left in the Premier League season here. So we're getting down the home stretch, and this is a big match for both squads. But Joe, before we dive into that, we got some pretty interesting news for the American side football soccer fans over here.
Is that right? I mean, this is the Messi meter we're getting back out into talking. What are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm throwing you a curveball here. It's not the Messi meter,
No, okay.
but I tell you what, the latest news is that LAFC is in talks with the French legend Giroud, and it looks like he's going to be signing. Looks like he's going to be joining with LAFC after the Euros this summer. That's the latest I heard. So that's pretty exciting for MLS fans.
I think so. I mean, you look at it as a player doing well, playing at the top levels in Europe, and then still, maybe is it harsh or is it reality to say past problem? But still, someone that is a quality player that would be exciting to be a part of this league and be exciting to watch. And for a side like LAFC to pick up another talented player, it's exciting.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. He is getting older, but at the same time, he's still putting up some pretty good numbers. He's still competing, so he's got at least what two good seasons left. I feel like, and he. So I'm excited to see him play in person. So it should be fun. So congrats to LAFC, congrats to the MLS. But Joe, we are here for the big time. We're here for the Premier League, Man City v Arsenal. These two have been at it back and forth. Last season they were at it. This season they're back at it. I mean, what are some initial thoughts going into this match, Joe?
Well, I mean, like you said, I mean, these are the top. Well, these are two of the top three teams in a sense, but they're only separated by a point. And here they are. I mean, I don't know if anybody thought Arsenal was going to be able to be at the top now. I think the results from the previous matches that helped them get to that spot, being on top by goal differential is a nice place to be for them. But I think that's part of it is here we are. It's really a three club race this late. Haven't seen this for a while. I mean, it kind of teetered back and forth, was close maybe last season, but I think the fact that either one of the top three sides could win and maybe even include a fourth, but I think it's probably going to be those top three.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Um, you know, Before we get into the details, it is worth noting that this is a home game for Man City, huge advantage there. And I looked at the numbers earlier, Joe. They're predicting a 50% likelihood that Man City wins, 20% likelihood that it's a draw, and 25% likelihood that it's going to go the other direction, Arsenal's way.
Those numbers being accurate. I mean, looking at how they've played up to this point, both sides, and where they are in the season, and maybe it's a little bit too much for Man City, those numbers. I think that's something that could be considered, but I wouldn't expect too many people to say that they're not the favorite if you're looking at those numbers.
And that kind of brings me to my next point. That was my initial thought too, especially with some of the recent games we've seen from both sides, really. But that brings me to my next question, Joe. I don't think anyone knows the status of the lineups. We could guess all day and probably still get it wrong, right? But some notable concerns, some notable players that may or may not be absent is KDB, right? Apparently he might get in, is what I hear. He was in training. I don't expect him to start. I expect it to be Foden, who's very capable himself. Grealish, again, it's day to day. He was at training. That would be huge if he was able to play. Probably won't start. We can guess that. And then, of course, Walker defensively. I mean, that's a lot of players out for Man City. Arsenal has a couple of injuries too that they're nursing, but Pep's got his hands full here. Do you think that the squad is going to be strong enough without those players if they're unable to play to go on and get a victory here?
Probably not quite in that order, but very close to that, and namely KDB at the top of the list. As I've said it, we've talked about it. I think it's not a uncommon point. Manchester City with Kevin De Bruyne is a much better side and has consistently over the last several seasons and campaigns performed exceptionally better with him in the lineup. With him out, probably Arsenal's going, okay, we're in this. It probably helps them with their confidence as far as what they're up against. I mean, again, you mentioned the players. I mean, Phil Foden's going to step in and has been, I think this season probably even more so, or has shown himself to be even at that level or beyond the level to be in this league and to compete, but not in comparison to KDB and what he does and what he presents as far as helping bolster Manchester City's side for this match.
Yeah, yeah. And we got two managers. They're both familiar with each other going at it. You have Pep, of course, one of the greats, going against Arteta, who's also been doing well as of late. There's, some pushback from fans early on in the season with Arteta, but hey, at this point in the season, they're still on fighting, competing for number one spot. So that's not too shabby, right? 2 seasons in a row, they're competing. So it's going to be good. What can we expect from a strategy perspective from both of these managers?
Arsenal away, I have to think that they're going to be okay with the Manchester City side with the ball. They're going to be okay with looking to see if they can, in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, identify how Manchester City set up to attack and being okay sitting back, looking to play off the counter. I think that's what Arteta does best or has done best with Arsenal. And I mean, in certain aspects, in certain matches, especially against sides that are strong, I think it's fair to say that Manchester City, we've almost just more or less said it already and reemphasized the point, that Manchester City is a more quality side or higher quality side than Arsenal, even though it's not indicative within the table, the standings. But I still think player for player, as a side, Manchester City is much stronger. So with that, again, that being said, Arsenal away, I would suggest, I think that's probably how they go about it. Be okay. I mean, that's almost in quotes in all capitals. I like that phrase, and I don't know how else to emphasize or say it, but be okay with the opposition, in this case, Manchester City, with the ball. How can you in 15, 20 minutes just be okay with allowing them to do what they're going to do? Allow them to show you what their patterns of play and what their means to go about build up, or how they're going to show you what they're going to do to possess, or which key players are going to be really trying to exploit you as opposition away in this match. So I would allow for them to have the ball and set up in that way.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, Holland's obviously a scoring threat for Man City. Foden, if he's on, he's on. If KDB comes in second half, he's a scoring threat. I mean, Silva, everybody for Man City can put the ball in the back of the net. Who are the guys that could be potential threats on the other side? Arsenal.
Saka is always and has been and continues to be a threat playing on the right wing in the way that he can, if get in behind, create chances and finish those that he should and needs to. Maybe you could be critical, say, more often. I think you're going to have a player in Odegaard that's going to be a distributor. He's going to be a playmaker, and he's going to continue to be a threat. I think that, maybe go out on a limb and say that maybe Havertz just slightly has started to come into form in a way that maybe, wow, how big would that be for this match for him to really, really, really be the guy that contributes for an Arsenal side? So, within those three, and then it's really about Arsenal. They do play well as a side. I mean, they do play well together. I mean, one individual player over the other, there's not really that player. Arsenal's not set up to have that one individual player, whether you could argue and maybe the point of contention is could they use or could they even into the future utilize and be better off with having a bigger, more impact player than what they do? But I think good teams, great teams, are usually consist of players or multiple players that, as a group, as a squad, compete. That's how they get the job done. So that's for me what Arsenal's going to need to do: play well together.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, there's been some injury reports on Arsenal's end too, so I don't want to say that both teams are in good form necessarily. And um, Martinelli's been day to day from what I understand, and so both teams are pretty beat up and injured relatively, which I guess you can expect at this point in the season. But I will go out and say that I think Man City is definitely not in good form at the moment, and worse so than Arsenal is. I feel like their injuries are more significant. They're missing some of their most valuable players here, whereas I think Arsenal's I think most of their top guys are going to be in and playing major minutes. So I think that's going to be a huge factor and could change the outcome of this match, even though it is a home match for Man City. So will be interesting. We'll see what happens, but those injuries, it's tough. It's tough to deal with, but again, at this point in the season, you kind of have to expect that a little bit. But anything else, Joe, we need to cover before we jump into our predictions here?
Well, maybe looking at the managers and their role in motivating a squad at this phase of the season, having had a week off. I think that's, for me, that was what changes the complexity of this a little bit. The fact that it is a game that where they're coming back from not having played for a little bit of time, and wondering of the two, Pep or Arteta, which will be more effective in motivating players to come back out into this game. Which of the two managers are going to be more motivational, not making it clear to the team? Because I don't think that there's any one. I don't think one or the other say, let's just go and get a point, right? I think both of these teams and both these sides have to go into this game thinking we got to win. This is a must-win game. So maybe the question is, which of those two managers do you think could be more motivating or more effective in getting those squad, whether they're working with a more depleted side with injuries in Manchester City, or they're more so, hey, Arsenal with the side that's almost basically inked in their lineup from game 1 to game 20, what will be game 29. So I don't know, maybe that's one thing. So Jeff, any insight, which of those two you think will have a better or do better motivating their side to show up for this game with, and I think we can say it with the understanding this is a must win.
Yeah, it is a must win. And at the end of the season, when all those single points, are adding up, you can't afford to lose any. And so this would be a huge opportunity for either team to gain an advantage and carry that momentum. So absolutely, Joe, I agree. This is a must win for both sides. The one thing I will mention is I know that Pep, I know that Champions League is important to him, right? Next week, Champions League. I don't know if that's going to factor into his decisions in terms of bringing some of those players back a little too early or keeping them to rest a little bit and make sure that they are ready for the Champions League match, as they'll have a tough competitor. I'm not sure what his decisions are going to be, but if I were coaching personally, I would know. I'd have that in the back of my mind. Champions League matches next week. We're going to need all the players we can get. We're going to need them to be healthy. Do I try to bring them back too early and risk injury, make it worse? Or do we just do the best that we can and let them recover and heal a little bit and hit the end of the season stronger? And I'm sure Pep's going to make the right decision, but that is something that I would be juggling if I was managing the squad is, do we bring them back early, or do we, have more of a strategy and let them recover and rest and go down the home stretch full throttle, right?
I'm glad you mentioned Champions League, Jeff, and I know how much you love the Champions League. Arsenal, though, when was the last time they're in the quarterfinals? They also have to consider it as well. A great opportunity for them to make their mark, having now found themselves in the quarterfinal. And probably, I mean, it's maybe even fair to say with the draw they got facing Bayern next week as well, having the opportunity to, or in the coming weeks, there having an opportunity to possibly get further along in their campaign in the Champions League as well. So is it? I mean, it's an arguable that's it's as important or more important for an Arsenal team that's needing to show that they can do more within European competition. So could it be both? All the above.
Yeah, I agree. They got a good draw there. So I agree with you. Both sides, both coaches, I'm sure are gonna keep that in the back of their mind as the game unfolds. But it's gonna be fun. I'm excited for it. I know you're excited for it. Honestly, I feel like this game could go either way. And it's going to be a surprise to see what the lineups are and what substitutions are in and how they factor the game's outcome. So I'm looking forward to it, Joe. Go ahead, hit me with that prediction.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and answer my own question because I'm not sure I got the response. I think that it's a Pep Guardiola Manchester City from whenever they wrapped up to the first minute they came back into camp or the first minute they came back into training as a squad to say, we know what we're up against. This is a must-win situation, must-win game. And I think they've been at it preparing all this time, whether it's this, that, or whoever, almost embarrassment of riches, if you will, with the Manchester City side. I think they all clearly understand the system of play. You can insert these players, and they're going to get this job done. Manchester City wins this 2-1.
Okay, so a close match. Okay.
Yes, yeah, I would agree. I think it's gonna be close. I don't think one side or the other runs away with it, but yes, a close match is fair to say.
I think that's fair, and I think that's a solid prediction. I think if both teams are in good form, their Man City's not injured like crazy, then I would definitely give Man City the nod here, and maybe even by a couple goals, right? I do think they're the better team if they are in good form. However, they're not. And, their last appearance wasn't too impressive. Arsenal's been playing a little bit better. So, those things factor into my decision here, even though it's a home match. And I know, Joe, both teams are super motivated. I know Pep is a legendary coach who will get his team fired up and ready for this match. I still think that, those injuries are going to hurt them. And I'm going to go a little bit different direction than you. I'm going to go 1-1 draw here, Joe.
Okay, I could see that happening as well. As much as neither one, I mean, are going to be satisfied, right? I think it's going to. I mean, go ahead and go further. If that were the case, and it is a draw, 1-1, which I think is a fair result. Who's the happier of the sides then?
That's a good question. I would say, given their current status and their current situation, I think Pep would be okay with that moving forward, right? Solely because the team just is just in rough shape right now, and they're gearing up for the big Champions League match next week. So that's my feeling. I know both teams want it. I know this is huge, but at the same time, they still have 10 matches left, roughly. They have Champions League matches, so that's where I'm at with that. I think Man City would be just fine coming away with this with a draw and gearing up for the rest of the season.
I think that's a good point that you make there. I think that the fact that there is still enough, it's not 3 weeks or 3 matches left. There's 10. There's a lot of good matches that are going to take place. The Champions League is a consideration for both. They're both in the same stage at the same time. Wow, really excited, Jeff. This is an exciting time for both these teams and these competitions.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a real fun one. So, as far as who's scoring those goals, I don't know. Holland's probably good for one. On the other end, oh geez, I don't know. I maybe Odegaard. Who's scoring your goals, Joe?
Holland is going to score for sure. Maybe a second. I mean, you mentioned a lot of times. I feel like these types of games, it's always somebody outside of the norm that has a way. And again, in the sense that if Manchester City were to win this 2-1, maybe they win one late out of something else. That maybe it's Stones in there with getting his head on one and finishing and something like that to go up and win it. I mean, it could go. I think that's where I'm at with that. It could be someone from outside of the regular goal scoring crew, if you will, of Manchester City to get the winner.
For sure, for sure. And on Arsenal side,
I'll go back to Saka. I think Saka's got one. He's due. to score in a game like this. Let's see if he doesn't put one in the back of the net.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Should be fun. Well, all right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Enjoy the game, and till next time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what we bring you here at the Pitch Pod, please do us a favor, hit that like and that subscribe. Don't forget, we're available on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Thank you, everyone, and keep pitching out there.
In a game, the round ball, round posts, anything can happen.